video on something that I just want to have a quick play around with. Which most of my videos are, let's be honest. So I'm making a trifle. So it's a basic trifle. This is just some leftover sponge which I've cut up and putting on into a tray, and then we've got 3 tins of cheap peaches because they're fine, and we're going to chop them up anyway, so we're not really bothered that they are uniformed in size or look pretty or anything like that. I'm not really bothered at all. And we're on budget as always, because everybody wants things as cheap as possible, and to get things as cheap as possible for people, you've got to cut the cost down, or you cut down the amount of work you're going to do on something. So these peaches are fine. They are from Lidl, about 33 pence a tin, something like that, and as you can see they are fine, and they taste fine. You know, no one would, in a blind tasting, no one would ever know. So chop them up, and then what I have been doing with my trifles is I've bought a load of cheap raspberries on the market. It was the end of the day, and I know the fruit and veg man quite well, and if there's anything left at the end of the day that he can't sell, or if he's not going to another market the next day that he can't sell, he will offer, instead of taking them home in the van or throwing them away, he will offer them in me at an extremely discounted rate. And that is my advice to people, actually. Do you know, if you want to get things a little bit cheaper, get to know the local market traders, and the fresh fruit and veg, they don't really want to take it home at the end of the day. They want to, I'm losing bits of peach. They don't really want to take it home at the end of the day. They'd much rather sell it for maybe less money than they were originally going to sell it for at the start of the day, just to get rid of it, just to give themselves some money to buy some more things the next day. So that's that. Yeah, so I've got this. I'm standing on some peaches which are on the floor. Do you know? What a mess. So these are the raspberries, which are they were too rough to use any other kind of way, you know. But I did puree them down, sieved out the seeds, added some sugar, and made some coulis. So I have been using this on the trifles just to give it that little bit of red fruitiness. I couldn't have frozen the raspberries and put them in the trifle that way, because they just were a little bit too rough. So it was a case of going through them all and picking out the good ones, type of thing. So ordinarily I'd use like a Swiss roll, which has got jam in it, but I've always got bits of sponge lying around, and sometimes I dry them out and turn them into biscotti, and sort of turn into sponge fingers, and sometimes I buy Swiss roll, but most of the time it's leftover sponge, which I turn into sponge fingers, or just, it's soft as that, so it's not going to take much soaking. And I see, oh there we go, that just needs a bit more chopping up. Just have a rough knife to do this with. You know, it just saves on a little bit of washing up. So this is how I have been making it, but I've run out of. Well, yeah, I think this is the last bit of raspberry cooler that I've got. So I was kind of thinking, I don't really want to be buying Swiss roll if I've got some sponge already that I could use from something else, or if I've got sponge fingers. So I was kind of thinking what I'm going to do about that. So this is just this quick video to kind of show you that, and then my next plan is to, I still want the red fruity element to it. I'm going to put some custard on top of that. The milk's just boiling, but you're not going to see that. You're just going to see this bit that I want to have a faff around with. And I always kind of, John, if I'm faffing around with something, I'm not going to make a video. That's probably why I've got so many videos. So my idea is the next trifle that I make will be with these sponge fingers. So these are bits of sponge from other experiments which I've dried out, or sometimes I freeze them, put them in the container, and then we use them in sponge fingers for anything that wants to be used with sponge fingers, instead of buying them, you know. If I've got some eggs, if I'm baking, I've got some eggs left over, I'll maybe 4 eggs, I'll just make a quick fatless sponge or something like that, and then that's that. But my idea is once we've run out of that, what we'll do is we'll take this cheap jam and we'll mix it with the juice that comes out of the, probably have to heat it, so we'll take the juice that's come out of the peaches, mix it with that, heat it, get it warm, and then pour that mixture over the top of the sponge fingers. And I think that what that will do, I don't normally like jelly in a trifle, but I think it will give us that, it won't set like a jelly because it's a bit watered down, but it will give us that fruity, that red fruity element to it and still soak the sponge. So the next part of the video will be me doing that and see how it turns out. Actually, quick tip, if you don't want a skin to form on top of things like custards, you just need to put a little bit of water on top of the custard, and what that will do, that will stop a skin from forming. One, and cling film is clingy. Well, it clings to everything that you don't want it to cling to. So what you can do as well is, because you put a little bit of water on top of it to stop the skin from forming, you can now put the cling film, it's just a piece I had prepared earlier, on top of the custard, and it won't pull the custard away. So if we've got two. If you use this, and we've got another bit of cling film ready, if you see that, I'll just ruin a bit of this. So if we just put a little bit of cling film on there like that, it wants to pull the custard off the top. So if you wet it first, you can avoid that from happening. Right, let's carry on with the experiment with the trifles. So I have melted 2 jars of jam in a pan just to get it liquid, and then there is 6 tins worth of peaches, and there's about 1.1 litre worth of juice that's come out of them. So we need to combine a little bit of this with this just to kind of keep it liquid, and then we're going to pour it all over. How's that going to work? Then we're going to pour it all over the sponge. So I've got 2 trays of sponge. That's alright, that's going to work. So the rest of that can go in there. Mix round. And it'll be easier in the jug, won't it? Yeah, it'll be easier in the jug. Yeah, I'm glad I put, it certainly needs 2 jars of jam. 2 like 400 gram jams of jar, something like that. So we'll see how this turns out. It's going to be nice because it's peach syrup and jam, but I just want to see if I can do it instead of having to buy fruit or buy Swiss roll. So, and then we just pour this over here, and then we'll let it soak in and cool, and we'll see what it's like when it's soaked in and cooled. We'll go. I was thinking it'll go a little bit like putting jelly in a trifle, which I'm not a huge fan of, if I'm honest. I don't like the way what happens with the jelly in the sponge. He kind of wants to impregnate it, and I don't. Is that the right word? You can impregnate something, can't you? It's not just when you're talking about babies. Impregnating, yeah. Anyway, that's kind of working, isn't it? And we've got some bits of jam on top, that'll be fine. There'll be a little treat for anyone. That's it, won't we? So I think that's there, that's definitely going to work, isn't it? And those bits of jam that aren't particularly melted will be fine. But I think that's going to work. Certainly going to be enough moisture, and then peaches on top, but we'll let it cool first before we put peaches on. But yeah, that's going to work. And also, I think there's enough liquid in that if I was to use dried sponge fingers. think. Yeah, so sometimes I dry them out. I've got them. I'll show you. Now, I can't remember if I put this in the start of the video. So, yeah, so you dry them out just in a hot cupboard or in a low oven, just to kind of dry them out so they go a little bit like biscotti. So I think there'll be enough liquid in all that to rehydrate those sponge fingers. But there we go, we'll let that cool and see what it's like if it sets up. So it looks like that's worked sufficiently. Let's just have a taste. That's nice. That's nice. That's much nicer than if you were to put jelly on the sponge. I think that's much nicer. So when I haven't got some raspberry puree or fruit puree, that's what I'll be doing. And it'll work with, because they're nice and soft now, it's also going to work with dried out sponge fingers as well. So there we go, success. So tin peaches on top of that, then custard, and then cream. There we go, success.